Hey everyone, it is tea time with the diva. Grab your tea, grab your coffee, because we're going to get into it. This tea time is dedicated to Diddy and the prosecutors over there in the Southern District of New York. On Monday, Diddy's defense lawyers, they put in paperwork to the judge saying, can you please let Diddy out on bail until his October 3rd sentencing? And they offered $50 million, a slew of other things, and said whatever else the judge wants to impose so that Diddy can be free until this hearing, they will accept. So the judge has let the rule, because after they put in their request, the prosecutors have the right to respond to the request and say to the judge, yay or nay, let him out, or we disagree, don't let him out, and they have to give the reasons why. They had to Thursday to respond, and yesterday they did respond, and they repeated what they've been repeating all along. He's dangerous. Do not let him out. Now, that happened on Monday. The defense put in a request. Last night or yesterday, the prosecutors answered. So we have to wait until the judge gives his ruling. Now, on Tuesday, Trump said that what he would consider pardoning Diddy, but he was going to wait until after the judge makes a ruling on Diddy's latest request to get out on bail. It is said that Trump said that if the judge denies bail, he will make a decision sooner or later regarding pardoning Diddy. If the judge lets him out on bail, he will wait until sentencing to decide whether or not he will give Diddy a pardon. So, we got to hold out and wait to see what happens. Now, let me go ahead and share screen. And I already told you I was of the mindset, and people was like, oh, you don't know what it's like to be in jail. And I never want to know what it's like to be in jail. But my point was that he already spent almost September of this year will be a year that he's been in jail. He's almost spent a year in jail. By the time his October hearing comes, he definitely would have served a year. And what I was saying is, not because jail is this pleasant place, but I was saying that he's just hold on and wait until the October sentencing, because if they give him more than a year as his sentence, he would have already served a year and he wouldn't have that much more time to go. So that was my thought process on that. So Diddy, prosecutor says he's dangerous and they oppose bail requests. Federal prosecutors in the Diddy case are hitting back at the music mogul, calling BS on him downplaying his convictions for transporting male escorts across state lines, and say there's legal precedent for the judge to deny bail. So just like the defense team had a task by the judge to go find, different cases in history where someone was charged to similar crimes like Diddy, and maybe when they was sentenced, they only got, maybe they got just probation, maybe they didn't get a sentence, they just had to go to some type of program or something like that. And the prosecutors had the same charge to go find cases where, someone was charged similar to Diddy, and maybe perhaps they got 24 months or 3 years behind bars. So that's what both of them had to do. So the prosecutors are saying they have legal evidence as to why the judge should yet again deny bail. In court docs filed Thursday, obtained by TMZ, prosecutors lay out their reasons for why Diddy should remain behind bars as he awaits his sentencing, following his conviction on 2 counts of violating the Mann Act. As you know, Diddy was acquitted of more serious racketeering and sex trafficking charges. Let's take a quick listen.
For a new trial now, but he says that this was all BS, that being prosecuted and convicted of the Mann Act is ridiculous, and he wants the whole thing thrown out.
Yeah, he wants his conviction. Remember, he was convicted on 2 counts of the Mann Act, but he wants them to be tossed. He wants it overturned, and he says, if you're not going to overturn it, then I want a new trial on those charges, and only on those charges, because
he can't be charged in the other, because he was found not guilty.
He was found not guilty.
And look, the reality is this, that he was acquitted on the 3 charges that were the whole basis for this case. He never would have been charged if it was just a Mann Act case, right? I mean, I think everybody can agree on that.
Right.
So he won the case. The 3 charges found not guilty, and he's found guilty on these 2 charges, which is archaic law, of originally a racist law. and hardly ever used by
So
itself.
what's interesting are the reasons that he says the Mann Act doesn't even apply to what he did. He's saying when you look at the facts of the case as it was presented in court during the trial, the Mann Act doesn't apply to him. If anything, he's saying the Mann Act applies to Cassie and to Jane. Now, if you want to try them on the Mann Act, that's fine, but it's not me. Now,
here's why that's ridiculous. Because he paid. Even though Cassie passed the money, he paid.
Well, he says there was no evidence of that. So this was a fascinating thing. By the way, he filed this last night at about 9:30 or so Pacific time. And Jamie had the fortune or misfortune of seeing this come in, seeing the documents come in, and then called me, and then we went through this whole, went through this 62 pages of this, figure out all the reasons that Diddy thinks the Mann Act doesn't apply to him.
Well, I mean, primarily he's saying that he's just a voyeur and an amateur pornographer, basically.
And he didn't have sex.
Yeah, and he didn't have sex with any of the male escorts. So he's saying all I did was watch the male escorts have sex with my former girlfriend.
Which he says is basically a First Amendment right of freedom of expression.
Exactly.
And remember, we should remind people what the Mann Act actually says is that it is the transportation of individuals across state line for purposes of sex, or it's also been written as lewd or immoral purposes, but it's sex.
Look,
he's saying, I didn't have sex with anybody. He also points out in the documents, I didn't arrange any of their travel. I didn't arrange their travel. I didn't arrange the hotel. I didn't arrange compensation for them. That was always done by the women, by his girlfriends.
This is very true, and like
I mean, that was the testimony anyway.
Well, no, his assistant testified that he had booked hotels. So yeah, but look, let's talk about what this is really about. Today is the deadline for prosecutors to tell the judge why Diddy should not be released on bail pending sentencing. What the defense has said is that you are using the Mann Act, which should not be a law used to deny bail. And the defense challenged the prosecutors, and the judge did too, to come up with cases where the Mann Act was used and somebody was denied bail post-conviction, pre-sentence. And so I'm not sure the prosecution is going to be able to find this, but that was something the judge wanted. So I think them doing this late last night is for the judge to read in the context of getting what the prosecution will submit today. And the judge will decide probably tomorrow whether Diddy, being convicted of the Mann Act, should get out on bail. Listen, there are a couple of things this is about. One is they're filing this to preserve their right of appeal. So that's one of the things that they file, a 60-page document. And it's basically saying, here are all the things that were wrong about the trial. And that's to preserve the right of appeal if it ends that way. But we have told you that Donald Trump is now involved in this case, that we know there have been communications between the White House and Diddy's defense team about a possible pardon. And what we're told is that Trump is going to seriously evaluate it based on two scenarios. If Diddy is released on bail, he probably won't do anything until he hears what the sentence is.
Trump won't do anything.
Trump won't do anything until he hears what the sentence is. But if Diddy is denied bail, then Trump would immediately look at it and make a decision. So presumably on Friday, the judge is going to decide, does Diddy get out on bail? If the judge says no, then the White House springs into action.
Right.
Hey, it's Elise from New York. Diddy's basically saying, I'm a voyeur, not a trafficker, and I'm being punished for being a freak in the sheets. And honestly, if that sticks, I wouldn't be shocked if Trump pardons him, and that would set the tone for what's considered socially acceptable in modern day sex crimes. And that's wild.
This is going to become really fascinating in the next week.
It is going to be fascinating, especially it's going to be fascinating to see what Trump does. On Wednesday, Diddy filed docs asking Judge Ron Subramanian to overturn his Mann Act conviction, arguing the crime involves the transport of people across state lines for purposes of sex, which Diddy denies doing. He claims he never had sex with any of the escorts, only his girlfriends did, and adds that he didn't arrange their transportation or compensation for the infamous freak-offs. Now, there, I think Diddy needs to stop. He might not have been the one to physically do it, but his money paid for these escorts. He needs to stop. How are you paying Jane's rent and she has the money to pay escorts? Like, we got to stop. He says he was merely a voyeur, an amateur P recorder, the escorts having sex with his ex-girlfriends, Cassie and Jane, who he claims made arrangements for their sexual encounters. Alternatively, he's asking the judge for a new trial solely on the Mann Act counts. Prosecutors are now fighting back, saying Diddy has failed to show the court any evidence to mitigate his crimes, which might justify releasing him on bail. In their filing, prosecutors cite 2 prior federal cases in which judges denied defendants bail after convictions under the Mann Act. They say both cases are almost carbon copies of Diddy's because the defendants were also facing sex trafficking charges, but were only convicted of Mann Act violations. Further, they said Diddy attempted to describe himself simply as a John, ignores the fact that he transported individuals for the purpose of P on hundreds of occasions over a course of decades. They also accused Diddy of plying Cassie and Jane with drugs to make sure they would participate in marathon freak-offs while terrorizing them with his violent outbursts. In their filing, the feds pushed back against his request to be released on a $50 million bond, arguing he poses a danger to others because of his history of violent behavior. They further accused Diddy of being a serious flight risk due to his endless financial means, demonstrated ability to conceal his crimes, his past efforts to bribe security officers, as well as his general disregard for the rule of law. Now, this flight risk thing, I'm not co-signing on that for the simple fact that this man, I don't see him fleeing. First of all, if he was convicted of, and they wouldn't even let him out if he was convicted of the RICO, then okay, you let him out on bail. Maybe he would be a flight risk, right? Because why not take your chances if you're going to face the rest of your life in jail? But I don't think he's a flight risk. I think they're reaching when they're saying that. Judge Subramanian has a lot to chew on before his bail decision. And remember, TMZ broke the story. President Trump is watching closely. He's considering a pardon for Diddy. And our sources say if bail is denied, POTUS could pull the trigger immediately. Listen, people, chat with me in the comments, and when I get an opportunity, I will chat back. If you're not a subscriber, subscribe. Hit the notification bell so that every time I upload a video, you will be notified. If you are a subscriber, welcome back. Everybody, thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts. The prosecutors once again said, no, I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked. The prosecutors are still angry that they didn't get a full victory on this case against Diddy, regardless of their lackluster evidence and what they put forth during the trial. They still wanted to, have a victory, because for them, they have gotten victories probably with less evidence on other cases. So they figured, we put all this smut out there about Diddy, we're definitely going to get a conviction on all charges. And they were shocked when they did not. So they're not going to back down. They're not ever going to back down. This is going to be a fight to the bitter end, and we're going to see how it plays out. Now the ball is in the judge's court, and he always had a tough job, but it's even harder now because at the end of the day, and I'm not minimizing, buying workers for relations, I'll say it that way. But at the end of the day, to keep this man in jail, and he wasn't found guilty of the more serious charges, it's crazy. But again, I still say to Diddy, sit there. Sit there for the simple fact that if you get, if they sentence you to 2 years in jail, you would already serve 1. So those are diva thoughts. Let me know yours. Chat with me in the comments, and when I get opportunity, I will chat back. If you're not a subscriber, subscribe. Hit the notification bell so that every time I upload a video, you will be notified. If you are a subscriber, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you later.